Hello, my lovely people. Today is finally something new, something fresh, and it couldn't be anything other than our beloved iwaoi. I don't want to make this video even longer, so without unnecessary rambling, before we start I have to warn you that the video contains implied sexual content, curse words, underage characters, and unfortunately major character death. I know this may be very triggering, so please reconsider watching it. It may also contain grammar mistakes, or editing errors, for which I apologize in advance. Enjoy. Do you know this lullaby called You Are My Sunshine? Well, Toru certainly did. He heard it many times throughout his life. It all started with his mum singing it every night to his ear so that he falls asleep faster. That time it became his source of calming down after a long day as a 4-year-old. Come on mum. Let's do something fun. It's not even that late yet. His mother chuckled softly before straightening her sweater and settling comfortably at Toru's bed. She patted the place next to her and opened the blanket for Toru to jump into. Come on baby, you'll do fun things tomorrow. It's time for you to sleep and get the energy to play volleyball and all the stuff you want to do, okay? She asked calmly while motioning with her hand to invite Toru to come to her. The small brunette pouted, but he walked over to his mother's arms and let her lift him up so she could tuck him under a blanket and a duvet. His bed always felt so safe and warm, and it somehow always made Toru so sleepy. Especially with his mum, who was gently caressing her son's hair while hugging him lovingly. It was their routine since Toru was born, and yet he always felt so special when his mum treated him as if he were the only child on this planet. It was truly magical how she made Toru feel it even with his 2 siblings. Well, that's apparently what you call the 𝘀𝘂𝘀𝘀's superpowers. He loved his mum the most in the world for what she always did, and he knew that this will never change. No matter what would happen between them, there will always be love and appreciation. Fine. But wake me up very early. Promise? He extended his pinky and waited for his mum to promise on it. Haha, of course, sweetie, I will wake you up at 5 a.m. she said jokingly while kissing Toru's forehead and shaking her pinky with his. But Toru quickly shook his head and frowned. Well, not that early, but earlier than usual. Okay. Can I start singing? Or is there any other very important thing that can't wait until tomorrow? The brunette smiled at her before bringing his hand to his chin as if he was thinking very intensely, and after a few short seconds, he repositioned himself in the bed to make his position more comfortable, hugged his mom's arm, and kissed her cheek. No, I think we're good. Yuma chuckled one more time before shaking her head playfully and closing her eyes and starting to hum the very well-known lullaby.
The other night, dear, as I lay sleeping, I dreamed I held you in my arms. When I awoke, dear, I was mistaken. So I hung my head and I cried.
Then, he met Hajime Iwaizumi, who happened to be his neighbor. They connected really fast, and the fact that they lived so close to each other only helped their friendship grow, since they've seen one another almost every day. Hajime became Toru's family, and it went the other way around as well. They were often coming over to each other's houses, and the first time Hajime stayed over for a whole night, he as well got to know Yuma's lullaby. At first Toru's mum was scared that Toru won't want Hajime to listen to his mum singing, because she knew that for Toru this was something special, and he didn't like to share, but for some reason, Hajime held some kind of privilege. Toru didn't even flinch when his mother asked him if it was okay to sing Hajime and him this song. He just answered happy and excited that it was obviously okay. Okay, boys, it's late. No, mum. We wanted to go play outside. Just one more set. Please, auntie. I don't want to go home yet. Yuma chuckled and patted Hajime's hair. I called your mum if it's okay for you to stay over, and she agreed, so if you want to. Of course, Iwa-chan wants to. Right? Toru beamed at the news that his mum brought. It would be their first sleepover, and for some reason, the brunette thought that this night is going to be amazing. Toru maybe let Hajime decide if he doesn't want to. That's okay, auntie. I have to keep this crybaby safe. He's always so scared. He is probably even scared to sleep alone. 𝘁𝘀𝘢 laughed and Toru pouted. Rude. Iwa-chan. I am not scared of anything. Toru turned on his feet and was standing with his back turned to 𝘁𝘀𝘢, pretending as if he was mad. Well, then I can go home. Yes. But at this the brunette quickly turned to his friend, hugged him tightly, and closed his eyes, pouting even more. No. You're staying with me. And we will watch alien movies for the whole night. Oh no, young man. You're going to sleep. But mum. Come on. Toru, you can dream about aliens. So will you stay? Toru asked with a voice full of hope. Yeah, let's go. Yuma smiled brightly as well because she truly loved 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢 at least as much as Toru did. They quickly showered, changed into pajamas and Toru's mum prepared a futon for 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢 next to the brunette's bed. Can't we just sleep together? Toru whined. Don't you think your bed is too small? You won't fit. Ugh, fine. He gave in before wrapping himself with a blanket, 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢 mirroring his actions. Yuma started positioning herself so she could sing the two boys the lullaby, but suddenly she stopped her actions and looked at her son with a concerned gaze. She leaned to Toru's ear when 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢 was still repositioning himself and asked the boy, "Is it okay if I sing your lullaby to 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢?" Toru looked at her for a few seconds, his smiley face not changing before he laughed a bit. Of course, it's okay, mum. Yuma mentally exhaled and gave her son a kiss on the forehead. After singing the song, she also gave a kiss on 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢's forehead and smiling at the two sleeping boys she left the room. It was silent for maybe 10 seconds before the brunette on the bed shifted to look at his friend. 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢? He didn't hear anything for a second, so he thought that maybe the spiky-haired boy is sleeping, but then the latter groaned quietly. What is it, Toru? So you're not asleep? Shh. You're yelling too loud. Right. Sorry. I can't sleep. Again. There was silence for a second. Me too. I don't understand. Usually, this song makes me fall asleep instantly, but today I am. Usually, when I am tired I fall asleep right away, but today I am excited. They said in unison and looked at each other. Iwa-chan gets excited over such small things as having a sleepover? Toru beamed, which caused 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢𝘢 to blush. You're yelling again. Okay, we have to do something to discharge our energies. Right. Let's play volleyball some more. That late? Don't you think it's a little dangerous? We're going to be in my garden. Nothing bad can happen to us. Don't worry. I am not worrying. Besides, if someone will try to attack us, I have you to protect me. Toru teased, and 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢𝘢's only response was to climb with Toru on his bed and smack his head. Moron. Let's wait until my family is asleep and then let's sneak out. Like teenagers. How would you know how teenagers sneak out? My sister's doing it all the time. For some reason, Toru couldn't help his excitement. Fine, but you have to calm down a little because you're making too much noise. The two boys waited for a few hours. In the meantime, Toru showed Iwaizumi all his toys and books about aliens, but when the last light in Toru's house was turned off, the two boys looked at each other and it was their cue to leave Toru's room. They tried to do it as quietly and quickly as possible, but every step they made felt too loud and they had to stop for a few seconds to make sure nobody heard them. But after at least a 10-minute trip, they managed to leave the house. We're free. Toru yelled a bit too loud, but Iwaizumi only chuckled this time and ran to Toru's small volleyball net. Come on, we have to stretch first. No. There's no time for that. Iwaizumi grunted and tried to tell Toru the importance of stretching before exercising, but the brunette only whined and asked his friend if he was perhaps his mum to tell him what to do. At that, 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢𝘢𝘢 frowned and walked away to stretch in his own respected space, calling Toru an idiot before doing so. But after all that, they were finally ready to play. At first, they practiced their serves, then it was time for some spiking, and then they wanted to do receives. It was already pretty late and they were a tad exhausted from all the training, but Toru still asked 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢𝘢 to serve him the uneasy balls to receive because it apparently helped him improve. And with hearing for the 1000th time, 𝘁𝘀𝘢𝘢𝘢𝘢𝘢, is that all you got? The mentioned boy served towards Toru the ball with as much force as he could possibly gather in his small arms and tried to set it so Toru won't know its direction before it hits the net. And well, somehow he managed. but he also forgot what a freak of a volleyball player Toru was, and Hajime probably didn't expect to see his friend try to receive that ball. And when he tried, something went wrong, and it was so fast that the small server didn't know what exactly happened, but Toru weirdly stood on his right leg, tried to jump for the ball but landed with a yelp on hard ground. Hajime didn't even have time to register what exactly happened, and Toru already started sobbing heartbreakingly. Hajime immediately forgot about the volleyball and ran towards his friend. Toru? What happened? Are you okay? He knew these were stupid things to do because he knew what happened and he knew that Toru wasn't okay, but he started panicking. I am sorry. This is my fault. We shouldn't have left your room. Toru, I am sorry. The spiky-haired boy pleaded, but Toru couldn't answer with anything but uncontrollable sobs. Please, Toru, I hate to see you crying. When Hajime saw that his apologies weren't helping, he kneeled closer to Toru and tried to wipe off his tears. Wow, what are you doing? The brunette sniffed but calmed down a little. I am sorry, I will take care of it, okay? Toru blinked a few times, and even though he wanted to stop crying because of how cute his best friend was, he couldn't stop the stream of tears. Hajime was worried, but he didn't let his worries get to his head. For now, he had to help his friend. He helped him sit properly and took his leg to his hands. He touched Toru's knee and the brunette hissed at the touch of his injury. Sorry. Stop saying sorry, it's not your fault. Hajime didn't want to argue, so he didn't say anything, but the guilt was really getting to him. After all, he didn't have to throw that ball with so much force. He could just, hey, I don't want to see you overthinking, okay? Toru touched Hajime's cheek, which caused the latter to look up from his knee. We're volleyball players and we have to be aware that this kind of injury might happen to us, but it's not your fault, yeah? Hajime looked down. Hajime. Say, do you understand? Hajime often said that Toru was a dummy and a crybaby because maybe in most of the cases he acted like one, but with these words, Hajime thought that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't so stupid after all, and maybe out of the two of them, he was the more worried one, but he would most definitely never tell that to Toru. So he just nodded and started rubbing Toru's knee in an attempt to ease the brunette's pain. Hajime thought that maybe his friend would like some distraction, but nothing came to his mind until he heard Toru humming some sort of song. He contemplated on whether he should ask Toru about what he was singing or just like the brunette, but then he realized that this was actually the lullaby that he heard from Toru's mum earlier that night. He's seen how happy and at the same time calm Toru was whenever he heard this song, so after a few seconds of thinking, the words left his mouth on their own. His brain probably not yet registering what he was doing.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
This was the only part that Hajime remembered, but when he heard silence from Toru, he quickly looked up at him to see the brunette with pink coloring on his cheeks and a smile lingering on his lips. Why, you remembered? Hajime suddenly felt really embarrassed, so he stood up and looked away. Whatever, don't mention it. I did it just so you won't wake up the neighbors. Besides, we should go back home. I did my best to ease your pain, but you have to sleep on it or something. Toru sniffled one last time that evening and tried to stand up, but something stopped him. What is it now? Hajime pretended to be annoyed, but in reality, he got worried. What if he massaged it wrong and made Toru's injury even worse? Or what if 𝘁𝘂𝘀 broke something? Or twisted his ankle? I can't stand up. It doesn't hurt that much anymore. Thanks to you, but it's too much and I am too tired to carry myself there. Maybe we should sleep out. 𝘬𝘢, what are you doing? Toru yelled suddenly because he felt someone picking him up onto their back. Of course, it was Hajime. What are you doing? I am heavy. The spiky-haired boy chuckled. No, you're not. You don't have muscles like me and you're light like an ant. Normally Hajime would start flexing his baby muscles, but right now it was impossible due to the fact that he had to hold Toru tightly so he won't fall and injure himself some more. When they finally reached Toru's room, 𝘁𝗲𝘢 lay Toru on his bed, but for some reason, a frown appeared on the brunette's face when he saw that 𝘁𝗢𝘢 goes to his futon. What? You won't sleep with me? Are you that scared? Mean. I just don't want you to have a backache tomorrow because you will have to carry me everywhere, and sleeping on the floor it's guaranteed, so. Whatever, no need to make a whole essay over a stupid sleeping together in one bed, Toru, said the spiky-haired boy while already climbing with Toru to the bed. Thank you for singing this, it helps me a lot. Yeah, figured. And with that, they fell asleep, and maybe 𝘁𝗢𝘢 hugged Toru to sleep and kissed his forehead, and maybe the brunette answered him with a kiss on the nose, but none of them mentioned it. This small thing was just a small begging to sleeping in one bed for the next few years until they went to school and everything changed. 𝘁𝗢𝘢 changed for Iwa-chan and Toru went back to just Oikoa, or sometimes 𝘁𝗵𝗃𝗀 and other weird and rude nicknames that Iwaizumi somehow came up with. What didn't change was the love that the two boys had for each other. Well, maybe it just grew stronger if it was even possible. It started off like always, just platonic love between childhood best friends. Maybe they were a bit closer with each other than with some of their friends, and sometimes when they had sleepovers they still slept together, but they didn't think it was something that had to change or was weird. They were comfortable in their friendship, so why would they change anything? One of the things that they didn't talk about was the fact that when Toru started growing up along with Iwaizumi, his mum stopped singing him his lullaby because he was apparently too old, but he still heard it sometimes just from someone else's lips and not so often. His dear friend, who somehow remembered the lyrics from this very memorable night that the lullaby calmed Toru, sang it to the brunette whenever he felt insecure, sad, or just needed Iwaizumi to be there for him and show his love somehow. That was one way to show it to the pair. Toru also sometimes sang the song to Iwaizumi, sometimes when he wanted to and sometimes when he knew he had to, for example at Iwaizumi's mother's funeral. It was the first time when Toru sang it himself. It was when they were in middle school and it broke his best friend's heart completely, but somehow with Toru and his dad in his life, 𝘁𝗢𝘢 managed to get through this tragic experience. Toru didn't talk about it, but the death of Mrs. Iwaizumi also broke his heart. After all, she was for him like a second mother and most importantly she was a good person. Too good she didn't deserve this. But life is unfair and it sometimes takes away people that we care about the most and that don't deserve death in the slightest. Especially death caused by a disease, but they had to move on. Not forget but accept it. That's what Iwaizumi's mum would want anyway. So Toru sang this suddenly much sadder lullaby to his friend when the spiky-haired boy hid with him somewhere before the funeral ceremony and cried his eyes out.
I'll always love you and make you happy, and nothing else could come between. But if you leave me to love another, you'll have shattered all of my dreams.
Suddenly he was interrupted by a tight hug. Why did this happen? Why her? Why now? Iwaizumi sobbed uncontrollably and made a pretty big stain on Oikoa's dress shirt with his tears. Yet for some reason, Toru couldn't care less about this worthless piece of clothing. After all, he had to take care of one of the most important people in his life. There was no time to think about the ceremony, his shirt, or even the fact that Iwaizumi's father was probably looking for them. Toru knew that he couldn't say much, that there wasn't anything that he could say that would ease his friend's pain, so he just rubbed his back, just like Iwaizumi did to him soothingly throughout all those years. Sometimes our loved ones leave, for the unknown for this universal reason, but I like to believe that they at least aren't in so much pain anymore, watching their families cry over their health. You know, I am sure your mum knew how strong you are and that she can say goodbye because her 𝘁𝗢𝘢 can do it. It would take time but this wound would heal somehow, with the help of other people that you love. And I hope you know that she loves you, with all her heart, no matter where she is right now. She is watching over you and she's proud that you're so strong, and you can handle this pain, 𝘁𝗢𝘢𝘢. Toru really tried to be strong for this. He couldn't cry. He had to be a support for his friend, no matter what, and seeing the brunette crying as well would certainly not help. But it was hard. Seeing 𝘁𝗢𝘢𝘢 so heartbroken was so fucking hard. He already couldn't bear the loss of a member of his family, but adding to it seeing how the person he loved was in pain was unbearable, especially because there was nothing that Toru could do. He could just be there for Iwaizumi, watch him hurt, and wait for the time to ease the pain. So when a small tear escaped Toru's eye, he shook it off before anyone could notice. Toru, please, don't ever leave me. I don't think I will survive it. My dad and you are all that's left. The broken tone with which Hajime said it was frightening for Toru. He never heard a voice so anguished, not from Iwaizumi, not from anyone. So there was only one right answer. I will never leave you, I promise. He didn't know for how long they were sitting on the floor of the church, and he didn't know when their parents tore them apart. It was all like a blur. When they went to high school, something changed between them. After Iwaizumi recovered, with huge help from 𝘀𝘀𝘀, and understood that his mother's death was nobody's fault and he has to learn how to live with it, his life became somehow easier. He and 𝘀𝘀𝘀 got into their dream school, which was Aoba Josei. They were an almost unbeatable duo in volleyball, and in their hearts, they began to develop some sort of unknown feeling toward one another. They always were really close to each other and they were caring towards the other one. They felt the need to protect their friend, and they just simply felt a connection deeper than with anyone else. But throughout their whole lives, it was all just a platonic feeling, or so they thought, until one night both of them realized on their own that they have developed something more than just love for a friend. They developed a genuine and sincere romantic love for each other. 𝘀𝘀𝘀 realized it on a simple sleepover with Iwaizumi, when they were cuddled up on a couch, watching some stupid movies. Toru was leaning against Hajime's chest while eating an unhealthy amount of snacks and commenting from time to time about the movie's plot. And at first, Iwaizumi was just answering him with quick hums or with something like "this is just a stupid movie, 𝘁𝘂𝘀." But when they were about halfway in the movie, Iwaizumi didn't say anything at one of the comments. Weird, but 𝘀𝘀𝘀 let it slide, until it reached the third time and Iwaizumi still didn't say anything. That's when 𝘀𝘀𝘀 turned to look at his best friend. "Iwa-chan, what are you?" But then he immediately shut his mouth when he saw that Iwaizumi was peacefully sleeping. He scrunched up his nose a little at the sudden movement of the brunette, but thankfully he didn't wake up. Toru immediately grabbed the remote from the coffee table and turned down the volume of the film, making sure to not turn it off completely because he knew that Iwaizumi slept more secure when he had some background noise. Then Toru fully shifted to face Iwaizumi and he unapologetically started to examine his features. He thought that it was the first time when he saw Iwaizumi so genuinely calm and relaxed, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm and his head gently resting on one of the couch's cushions. Toru consciously extended his hand to trace Iwaizumi's jawline with his finger, and with that he started leaning closer and closer to his best friend, still gently sliding his finger from cheek to cheek and from jawline to collarbones. 𝘀𝘀𝘀 for some reason loved the touch of Iwaizumi's skin under his fingers and he couldn't stop. He took his sweet time just appreciating Iwaizumi's sleeping face, and then it suddenly hit him. Holy shit, was it possible that he may have liked touching and watching Hajime a bit too much? And that his feelings when he was looking at Iwaizumi were much stronger than these platonic ones? Holy shit, 𝘀𝘀𝘀 liked Iwaizumi actually. Like, would he a misunderstanding? With so many years of knowing each other, of pining to each other unknowingly, or subtle touches and gestures to show the other appreciation and admiration, this was most definitely simple and pure love. Undeniably and sincerely, 𝘀𝘀𝘀 felt it, and he didn't know if he should be whether scared or happy. He just knew that from now on, his life will change a lot, and if he did it well, it will change for the better. Iwaizumi, on the other hand, realized a bit earlier than 𝘀𝘀𝘀. Just a few days, but still, earlier. As he, later on, counted it, it was exactly 20 days, just like the difference between their birthdays. They even laughed that Toru had to be a little late, again, but that's not what this story is about. It's about when and how Iwaizumi started seeing his best friend as something more, when he saw him not only as his volleyball partner and childhood friend but also someone whom he trusted undeniably and endlessly, with everything. Someone who was much more than just normal support throughout all his life. He was a shoulder to cry onto, even though he would never admit it out loud. He was his personal source of entertainment. He was his mental support. He helped him improve in life and in volleyball, and he was generally the most important person in his entire life. Toru, of course, feeling the same, if not more, even though it was probably impossible, according to the fact that they loved each other endlessly and equally. When Iwaizumi discovered all of this, it was during one of their bigger arguments. They actually never argued. From time to time they had small fights over stupid nothings that they figured after an hour of silent treatment or so. But this one was actually the first big fight that had since probably their first year in high school. He didn't even know what it was exactly about, but he remembered the emptiness that the lack of Toru in his life brought to his routine. He felt less energetic. He lost his appetite. His focus during the lessons worsened, which later affected his grades, and he felt weaker both mentally and physically every day. His friends noticed it. His father noticed it. And even his teacher noticed it. But Iwaizumi didn't care. He just wanted for him and Toru to be okay again. So after one of their training, he secretly asked their teammates if it was okay for them to leave earlier so he could stay alone with Ikoa and talk things out. And thankfully, as the amazing people they are, they agreed easily and wished him good luck. He smiled at that, and when the practice was already over, he saw how quickly his teammates were changing just to leave them alone. They had no idea how much he appreciated, and thankfully Ikoa rather didn't realize, because even though he gave them a few wild glances, he didn't mention it. So when Kindaichi left as the last one, leaving Ikoa and Iwaizumi alone, the brunette just tried to leave right after him, but the spiky-haired boy stopped him by grabbing the latter's wrist. Ikoa didn't let Iwaizumi touch him, so he shook the hand on his wrist off, but didn't say anything, nor did he walk anyway. He just stood there, not paying attention to his friend, as if he wasn't there. That truly broke Iwaizumi's heart a little, but he didn't show it. Ikoa, do you hate me? At this simple yet powerful sentence, the brunette immediately turned his body to look at Iwaizumi. What are you saying? No, really, what kind of bullshit are you pulling right now? What even made you ask that question? What the fuck? Of course, I don't. You're my friend. I love you, why would you even? But he was cut off by the sudden tight hug from Iwaizumi. Thank God. I was so scared. I love you too. Ikoa blinked. Why would you ask that stupid question? Hug me back and I will tell you. Iwaizumi obviously wasn't a clingy person, but as earlier he already noticed, something about Ikoa made him different, more vulnerable. He didn't know yet if it was a good or a bad thing, but he wanted to find out. Ikoa hesitantly wrapped his arms around Iwaizumi, and when the spiky-haired man didn't even flinch, Ikoa buried his head in the crook of Hajime's neck and hugged him tightly. You were mad at me. You weren't talking to me, and I felt like you treated me as if I was a goddamn heir. I don't know what I did to make you that upset, but I am sorry. I am so sorry. Please Toru, let's not fight. Toru exhaled sharply at the use of his given name that he didn't hear from Hajime's lips for too long, but he didn't mention it. Iwa-chan, the truth is, I don't even remember why I was so mad in the first place, and when I realized it I was so embarrassed that I just decided to wait until our issue will fix itself on its own. I am so sorry. He cried in the crook of Iwa's neck. And trust me, Toru expected every possible type of reaction, well except for the one that he actually received, because the latter, instead of getting angry like he usually did, started laughing like a really strong and sincere laugh. Toru blinked at this for a few moments before falling into a fit of laughter himself. I can't believe it. Did we really just have this terrible fight over something that none of us even remember? He laughed some more. I guess so. Toru laughed too. And this was probably when Iwaizumi, for some unknown reason, was sure that he loved Ikoa more than just a friend and a partner. He loved him like his soulmate, his other half, and just genuinely part of his heart. Because no matter how stupid shit Toru would do or say, Iwaizumi would always love him the same, and the only thing that changed was the love that grew only stronger. And with these feelings, the two boys eventually confessed, in a really awkward way, but at the same time, it was so their way that it couldn't be more perfect. Jesus, you piss me off so badly that I just, what? I want to kiss this stupid smirk off your goddamn face. Why? Did you just confess in such a stupid way, Hajime? Iwaizumi honestly couldn't tell if 𝘁𝘂𝘀 was mad because of the confession or because of the way he confessed, but Toru clearly didn't hold him in his wonder for a long time. Ugh, you're the worst. But fine. Since you actually finally confessed before I had to do it, I will forgive you this time. You like me too? Duh. Who else would I like? Iwaizumi froze as his brain tried to process what just fucking happened, but 𝘁𝘂𝘀, again, had a different idea. Come on, Iwa-chan. At least hug me or something before you turn off completely. They started dating 3 months before finishing school, but they made sure to get the best out of this high school sweethearts experience. Their first kiss was cliché, chaste, and at the same time so inexperienced. It was in the rain, in front of the closed ice cream shop under one umbrella that they had to share if they didn't want to be even wetter. The first time they made love was magical, unexperienced, a bit awkward, and very quick, but at the same time sweet, loving, caring, and goddamn good. That night Iwaizumi made sure to gently kiss every part of 𝘁𝘂𝘀's body, to tell him through his actions just how much he loved him, his personality, even if it was kind of shitty, his soul, his beautiful body, and all his person in general. Every flaw that Toru had, even though in Hajime's eyes he had none, every bruise and every scratch, he loved it all and he wanted to show it, so he made love to Toru with such tenderness and fondness, receiving from the brunette under him soft moans, whimpers and this special way with which Toru said his name like it was the biggest secret. Haji Hajime, I love you. He whispered to the spiky-haired boy's ear as he was approaching his climax. I love you too, Toru. All these moments from their life together were their secret and the biggest blessing. Actually, they were each other's biggest blessings, and there was nothing that could overcome this love, or so they thought. After high school, they were both moving out of Japan, Iwaizumi going to Irvine to California and 𝘁𝘂𝘀 moving out to Argentina to follow his dreams. They were both doing what they wanted and they were great at it. Because even though they were almost 3,000 miles away from each other, they stayed together strong and confident about their relationship. They already planned that when Iwaizumi was done with his studies, he would move in with Toru to Argentina and there would be no more distance between them. So despite all the rumors about long-distance relationships, they were apparently in these few percent that actually could make long-distance work. It was hard. Of course, it was. They were sad more than one time and they had a few fights because it was hard to live without one another after spending together practically all their lives, but it was bearable. The worst moments were really happening rather rarely, so Toru could confidently say that they were strong and unbreakable. Until one phone call from Iwaizumi call that changed Toru's life by 180 degrees. They were calling each other every day, at exactly 6 p.m., and they always had a video call. But when Toru called Iwaizumi, his voice was weirdly off and he didn't have his camera on. 𝘁𝘂𝘀 immediately knew that something must have happened. You look good as always, Toru. He said with no usual admiration added to it. Hajime? What happened? Nothing. Why is your camera turned off? Toru. Hajime started rather hesitantly. Before I turn it on, I need you to promise me that you won't freak out, alright? That didn't sound any good. You want me to be calm when you're acting so weird? What happened? He frowned and only heard Iwaizumi sigh on the other hand before his camera turned on. Well, what happened? Toru didn't know what he felt yet as he was putting his clothes in his suitcase and tried to contact his coach that he has to leave Argentina. All he knew was that Hajime was 15 hours away in Irvine. He was lying in a hospital bed, looking scared and weak, and that the doctors were testing him on whether it was possible that he has an aneurysm. He knew it, he saw it, he heard it from Hajime himself. It happened a few minutes ago. Well, what happened? For now, nothing. For several days now I just felt my neck being stiff and I felt like I was about to puke all the time. Then I kind of fainted at one of my exams and I ended up here. The doctors said that they have to do an USG because these symptoms can be associated with an aneurysm. They said not to worry because average people aren't that exposed to it, but just to be sure. A tear fell down Toru's cheek. Hajime. Your mum died because of an aneurysm. Does that mean you can have it inherited? No. Toru, there are no confirmed tests that the aneurysm is inherited, so But people who had it in their families are more exposed to danger, aren't they? Iwaizumi fell silent and Toru thought that he was considering it. He saw a tear running down his lover's cheek. Haji. Toru. I am scared, okay? I am scared. I know what can happen if the tests are positive and... He let out a broken sob that made Toru's heart ache. And I am aware of all this, but I don't want to let it slip to my mind, okay? It's going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We always are. Toru, my love. He smiled hopefully, but Ikoa's heart was shattered. What did it mean for them? Wait, no. Hajime was right, nothing was confirmed yet. They didn't have to worry in advance. And yet, I am coming to Irvine. Send me the location of the hospital you're in. Wait, what? Toru hung up and booked the first tickets that he found. He had about 30 minutes to get to the airport. That was alright. He would manage, he had to. For Iwaizumi, and for his own sake. Or else he wouldn't be able to sleep peacefully that night. Who would? Knowing that their lover is in a cold hospital, alone, with no one around to hold, kiss, and tell him reassuring words. He wouldn't disappoint. And with that, he showed up at the hospital the next morning, worn out and terribly tired, but when the receptionist told him the room in which Hajime was lying, he sprinted there faster than ever. Hajime. He yelled and ran to hug Iwaizumi, but only after a few seconds he realized that the latter wasn't hugging him back. What is it? The spiky-haired man didn't say anything. Instead, he handed the brunette some papers. Papers that ruined absolutely everything. They showed a black and white X-ray of how Toru assumed Iwaizumi's brain, and it was clear as day that the dark thing in the middle was something dangerous. Something that was supposed to be thinner like a normal artery, had something like a bulge, something that was. Is this? Hajime hugged him and the only thing that he said was the saddest and quietest thing Toru's ever heard. Toru, I don't want to die. The brunette didn't know how long they stayed like that. Everything was like a blur to him. From the moment he and Iwaizumi lay down in the latter's bed while Hajime slowly stroked Toru's scalp, to when a doctor came in with all the information about the needed treatment and the dangerous possibilities that are connected to the surgery that Iwaizumi may need to undergo because his aneurysm is triggered by his constant physical effort. All this was unreal to Toru. Just yesterday they were happy, thinking about the fact that it was Iwaizumi's last year of studies and then they would be together, forever. Now they have to pray and beg to whatever there is that holds the power for Iwaizumi's aneurysm not to rupture and end basically everything. Because if Iwaizumi died, Ikoa would die too, that's how he pictured it. And with that, they managed to survive another 3 months. Iwaizumi was under constant control of the doctors and Toru didn't leave him for a second. They lived together, if only the circumstances were different. It was peaceful and Toru genuinely thought everything was going great until one afternoon. Iwaizumi felt different from the moment he woke up, but they thought that it was just a bad sleep. They couldn't be more wrong. After they ate their dinner, Hajime was hardly standing on his feet, and as Toru searched for his phone to call the doctor, the spiky-haired man fainted. He was immediately brought to the ambulance and to the hospital, and after the longest 5 minutes that Toru's ever lived through, the doctors said that Iwaizumi needs to get surgery because something with his aneurysm was certainly wrong. Iwaizumi and Ikoa were scared, terrified when the doctor said that they have to prepare the room, and Iwaizumi had to sign the documents where he was claiming that he knows that there is a possibility that he can die. Ikoa cried through all this. No matter how strong he wanted to be for Iwaizumi, it was impossible to hold back the endless tears. They were left for a few last minutes before the surgery. Hajime, I want you to know that I love you the most in the world, and there is no fucking way that I am leaving this hospital without you by my side, so go to this fucking surgery room and beat that motherfucker up. Understood? Toru referred to Iwaizumi's aneurysm rather harshly, but who could blame him? Toru, can you sing for me just one more time? It's not the last time. I know. We will see each other. We will survive it. I just want to hear it. It makes me calmer. And Toru wouldn't say no, not to Iwaizumi.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away.
Single tears escaped their eyes and Hajime gave Toru one last tender kiss on the lips before the doctors took him to the surgery room. I love you. Wait for me. I love you more. 3 hours had passed. Ikuo was looking at his watch all the time, anxiously looking for any signs of the doctors. And when one finally left the room where Iwaizumi was taken, he wished the doctor never left the room to tell him this. Mr. Ikuo, we are very sorry. We tried our best. Time of death is 2:33 p.m. We are very sorry for your loss. Emptiness. That's all Ikuo felt now. He lost everything. His whole world just died. In a surgery room, a few meters away from Toru. He would never hear him again, see him again, kiss him again, live with him. They won't get married. All the plans they have ever had, everything disappeared, leaving Toru empty with his heart ripped out of his chest and broken into the smallest pieces. He didn't know what to do, so he just fell to his knees and let the undying stream of tears flow out of his eyes. But no sound left him. His body reacted on its own when he himself died inside, together with Iwaizumi, as if in sync. Iwaizumi was gone. Forever. He left with Toru's soul and heart, living an empty shell of a boy that once had everything, and just like that, lost everything. The end. Thank you so much for watching. I don't know what to say after such a sad ending, but I am very grateful for all the support, and for all the new people who subscribed. I love you all, and if you don't subscribe yet, I encourage you to do so. Now let's go cry our eyes out, shall we? Take care and see you next time.